first thing she noticed about him was that he didn't bow. Every being who entered the inner sanctuary bowed. It was reflex, trained into dignitaries and delegates across 40 star systems, a biological response to the weight of her presence. But this one walked in backward, dragging a diagnostic array behind him, muttering something technical and profane under his breath, and only turned around when his boot caught the edge of the ceremonial pool. He looked at her, she looked at him, and through lenses fogged with engine residue and gods knew what else, he said without a single beat of hesitation, "You are, without question, the most stunning alien I have ever seen in my life." Not a declaration, not flattery, just fact, delivered the way a person announces that a conduit is overloaded, mildly surprised by it, completely sincere. Lyria Solari, Empress of the Athelian Confederacy, commander of the bioluminescent fleets, did not know what to do with that. Elias Thorne had been wedged into the portside manifold of the Iron Drifter for 6 hours when the contract came through. The drifter groaned around him, a freighter held together by rerouted power lines, mismatched alloys, and the particular brand of stubbornness that only humans seem to manufacture in unlimited supply. Ethelian tech was grown, coaxed from living crystalline structures over decades. Human grit was forged, hammered, burned, welded back together, and told to run anyway. Elias had always found something honest in that distinction. Triple pay, the contract said. Catastrophic resonance failure, it said. Bioluminescent spires, Ethelian Confederacy homeworld. He pulled himself out of the manifold, read it twice, and started packing. The attendant at the spires had been deeply, visibly pained by Elias's existence. She was tall, luminescent at the collar and wrists the way all Ethelians were, and she held her list of architectural protocols the way someone holds a shield before a known projectile. Restricted zones were marked in 3 languages. Unauthorized access points were numbered. There was an entire subsection dedicated to acoustical reverence. Apparently, loud boots constituted a diplomatic incident. Elias listened carefully. He nodded at appropriate intervals. He fully intended to honor every single restriction right up until the moment the resonance trail led him through a door marked clearly in 2 of those languages, dragging his diagnostics behind him, straight into the quiet heart of someone else's stillness. He didn't notice the soft glow of the water, or the scattered documents she'd clearly been sitting with for hours, trying to outthink a court that had already made up its mind about everything. He noticed the power trace, the faint harmonic pulse bleeding through the floor, until he turned around. The guards came fast, 4 of them, weapons raised, voices carrying the specific register of people who considered this situation unforgivable. The Empress raised one hand. The room went still. She was looking at him the way someone looks at something they have never been able to categorize. Not with offense, not with warmth yet, but with the particular quality of attention a person gives to the first truly unexpected thing they've encountered in years. Maybe longer. He came to fix a resonance core. He had no idea yet what else he was about to break. The scandal broke on the 14th day, not because Elias had done anything particularly scandalous. By his own accounting, he'd simply kept showing up where he was summoned. But the nobility of the Athelian Confederacy had a precise vocabulary for what they were watching, and none of those words were kind. A commoner, a human, grease-stained and plain-spoken, and utterly without political pedigree, walking the inner corridors of the palace with the easy confidence of someone who had decided the layout made more sense if you ignored the ceremonial roots entirely. Infrastructure optimization, the official summons always read. The court read it differently every time. The floating gardens existed above the third tier of the spires, is suspended on resonance fields that Elias now understood better than most of the architects who'd grown them. He'd fixed 3 of the stabilizers himself, which the head groundskeeper had accepted with deeply conflicted gratitude. Lyria walked beside him without the usual distance she kept from everything. That was the thing about her that the portraits never captured. How contained she was. How precisely managed. Every gesture calculated for the room she was standing in. Every word selected for the audience it would eventually reach. She said quietly, "Do you know what the worst part of this position is?" He didn't answer immediately. He'd learned that she didn't always want an answer right away. "It is that I am never simply present," she continued. "I am always a symbol. Every room I enter becomes a statement. Our every word I don't say becomes a policy." A pause. Below them, bioluminescent blooms drifted in slow rotation, indifferent and beautiful. "I have not been a person in a very long time." Elias looked at her sideways. "That's the loneliest thing I've ever heard. Not diplomatic, not measured, just true." Chief Diplomat Vareth found him the next morning. The warning was delivered with the smooth precision of someone who had ended careers before and considered it a craft. Elias was a target, Vareth explained, not because of anything he'd done, but because of what his continued presence implied. Her rivals were patient, they were institutional, and they would not come at Elias directly. Vareth let that settle. "Leave," he said simply, "and none of this follows you." Elias turned the thermal coupler he'd been holding over in his hands once, twice. He set it down. "Appreciate the heads up," he said, and then he went to find her. She was at the observatory window when he arrived, the one that faced the open dark between star systems, where the light took decades just to arrive. He'd learned that she came here when she needed to stop performing. He told her the truth. All of it. Not the careful version, not the version he'd built in his head on the walk over. The actual truth, that somewhere between the resonance core and the floating gardens and the 14 summons that were never really about infrastructure, he had developed feelings for her that he had absolutely no protocol for, and he wasn't going to pretend otherwise just because it was inconvenient for someone's political calendar. She was quiet for a long time. "You are," she said finally, "profoundly complicated." "I've been told. I did not mean it as a criticism." Truth is, neither of them slept much that night. There was too much that had been said, too much that didn't need to be. The official appointment was announced 6 days later. High technical consultant of the royal household, permanent placement, effective immediately. The court's reaction was precisely what both of them had expected, and neither of them especially cared about. Elias moved his tools first, then the rest. The iron drifter stayed docked at the lower port. Not decommissioned, not sold, just waiting. He'd always believed a ship should have somewhere to return to. Ironic, then, that the place he'd finally stopped leaving was a palace. The balcony faced 3 directions at once, and the spires glowing softly below them as the starlight came in from distances neither of them would ever cross. She stood close enough that their shoulders nearly touched, which for Lyria was a declaration without words. He looked out at it all, the infinite, indifferent dark, full of systems he'd repaired and routes he'd run and contracts that had never once asked who he was when the job was done. "Complicated honesty," he said, "over perfect isolation." She glanced at him. "Is that a philosophy?" "It's a preference." He let the silence sit between them. Warm, unmanaged, entirely theirs. "Turns out I'm pretty good at it." The most dangerous thing in a palace of lies as it happened was a man who simply couldn't help but tell the truth. And she had decided, with full awareness of every consequence, to keep him below them. The spires pulsed with quiet light. Above them, the stars held their ancient distance. Neither of them moved to go inside for a long time.